7 of the top 10 growth cities in America right now are here in Florida. Let that sink in for just a second. 7 out of 10. And yet, you've probably also seen the headlines. Florida migration has dropped, the wave is over, people are heading to the Carolinas, Florida is just bust. So, which one is it? And here's the question that I think actually matters. Cape Coral doesn't even appear on the top 25 growth city list. So what does that mean for somebody who's thinking about moving here? Is it a warning sign? Or is it actually the most interesting thing about this market right now? Now stay with me here, because by the end of this video, you're gonna understand exactly why Cape Coral not being on that list might actually be the best news you've heard. I'm Jamie Kolev with the Kolev Group here in Cape Coral, Florida. I live in this market and I work here every single day. So I see what the data says, I definitely hear what the headlines are saying, and I talk to people actually making the decisions to move here. And here's what most real estate content gets wrong about this story. Because the narrative you've probably absorbed is that Florida's migration wave has crashed. The remote work boom sent a flood of people south from 2020 to 2022. Prices here exploded, and now it's normalizing. So people, instead of coming to Florida, are going to Tennessee, they're going to Texas, they're going to the Carolinas. Florida had its moment, but now it's over. But here's what the narrative misses. 7 of the top 10 growth cities in America are still in Florida. We're dominating the list. And the reasons people have always moved to this state haven't changed. We don't have any state income tax. There's no tax on retirement income, Social Security, or your pension. We have 300 days of sunshine and a lifestyle that most of the country is still paying full price to visit on vacation for 1 week out of the year. So the wave here didn't end, but the composition did change, and where it's landing changed as well. So I'm not going to be reading national headlines and translating them for you. I'm watching absorption rates, days on market, and the license plates at my open houses. I see the actual buyers that are making the actual decisions, who they are, where they're coming from, and what they're telling me about why Cape Coral specifically. So in this video, I'm going to show you 7 things that are happening right now that explain exactly what the Florida migration story really looks like here in 2026, why Cape Coral isn't on the growth city list, and why, when you understand the full picture, that might actually be exactly where you want to be. So let's talk about this growth city ranking, all right? Because I want you to understand exactly what it's measuring and exactly what it isn't measuring. The U-Haul Growth Index and similar rankings that track the volume of inbound moves relative to outbound moves, they're measuring raw traffic flow. Quantity, not quality, volume, and definitely not what type of buyer profile. And by that measure, Florida is still absolutely dominant. 7 of the top 10 growth cities in America are right here. Ocala holds the #1 spot for the 3rd time in 4 years. Northport, which sits a little bit north of Cape Coral in our neighboring market of Charlotte County, is #2 in the entire country. Kissimmee, over by Orlando, is 4th, and Claremont is 5th. And then North Fort Myers didn't make the top 10, but it literally sits just north of us and made the top 25. Now, here's what I want you to notice about that list. Ocala, Kissimmee, Claremont. These are inland, affordable, high-volume markets. They're capturing a specific type of mover, people that are chasing the lowest available price point inside of a no-income tax state. And that is a completely different buyer profile than the people that are moving here to Cape Coral. The Cape Coral buyer isn't chasing necessarily a list. They're not saying, I want to move to the fastest growing city in Florida, although we are growing. They're saying, I want waterfront access. I want Southwest Florida's lifestyle, and I want to get there before prices look like Naples and Sarasota. That is a deliberate, researched decision and not a migration trend. So being off that list doesn't mean Cape Coral is losing. It means Cape Coral is competing in a completely different category. And when you understand that difference a little bit, the rest of this video is going to make a lot more sense. Now you may be thinking, okay, so people are still moving to Florida, but the numbers dropped significantly from the pandemic peak. And yeah, you're right. So let's talk about what actually happened and why the story is a little bit more nuanced than what you're seeing in the headlines. I won't lie and say the headlines are absolutely wrong, because they are accurate. Florida migration volume did drop significantly from its 2021 and 2022 peak. There, we saw this wave of remote workers who could suddenly live anywhere. And a huge portion of that cohort already moved. They're here. They did it. So yes, the raw number of people packing U-Hauls and heading south looks smaller now than it did at peak pandemic relocation time. That part is 100% real. But here's what that number doesn't tell you. Who replaced them? Who's moving here now? Because what happened after the remote work wave? Baby boomers, the largest generation in American history, is now hitting retirement age at a rate of roughly 10,000 people a day nationally. And Florida has always been a top destination for that demographic, for one reason that never changes. We don't tax your retirement income, not your pension, not your 401k distribution, not your Social Security, not your investment income. Zero state income tax on any of it. Nationally, baby boomers now account for 42% of all home buyers. And they don't disappear when mortgage rates rise. They're not waiting on a rate cut. They sold a house in New Jersey or Illinois for $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. They're coming in with equity and they're coming in with a plan. So the migration story didn't end. The buyer changed. And frankly, the buyer that's replacing those remote work wave is more financially stable, more equity rich, and more committed to the decision. So that's not necessarily a downgrade for Cape Coral. That's actually an upgrade in the quality of demand that we're seeing here. But let's get specific, because I hear a lot of people say Florida, like it's one market, and it absolutely is not. The city you're looking at matters enormously. So let me show you what that looks like when you zoom in. Now, something I want to make sure that we don't skip over is the fundamentals, because sometimes in real estate content, we talk so much about the data, how many houses are selling, what the inventory is looking like, that we forget to talk about the actual reasons people make life decisions. The reason people move to Florida are structural. They're baked in and they don't go anywhere. For starters, Florida has no state income tax. That one line alone, depending on your income, can put anywhere from a few $1,000s to tens of $1,000s back in your pocket every single year. So for someone making $150,000 a year coming from California or New York, we're talking about a meaningful, real annual difference in take-home pay. And Florida also doesn't tax retirement income, pension distribution, Social Security, or investment earnings at the state level. So for a retiree, that calculation is often the deciding factor and one of the main reasons that they move here. Then you add in the climate. I mean, we have roughly 300 days of sun in Southwest Florida. And the outdoor lifestyle that most of the country literally travels here on vacation to experience. And now our healthcare infrastructure has grown substantially to serve the aging population. No state estate tax, and a cost of living that, even after the post-pandemic appreciation, still comes in significantly below the Northeast and West Coast metros that are supplying the majority of our buyers down here. None of that changes when U-Haul rankings shift. The financial math that sends people to Florida is structural. The lifestyle pull is structural. Those are multi-decade forces, not a trend. Now, here's where I want to get specific about Cape Coral, because Cape Coral's median price right now tells a story that most people outside of Southwest Florida haven't fully processed yet. So let me show you that number. But before I get into the Cape Coral specific picture, if you're seriously considering a move to this area and you want a complete breakdown of everything that you need to know before you decide, we put together a free Cape Coral relocation guide. It covers neighborhoods, flood zones, canal access, the real insurance picture, all of it. So we've got the link in the description. Go grab it. It's free. But let's get back to that number we talked about. So let me put a number on the table that I think is genuinely unappreciated. Cape Coral median home sale price is approximately $375,000. That is 11% below the national average. It's below the Florida state median. It's below Fort Myers, well below Sarasota, and it is dramatically below Naples, which sits above $700,000. And it is not even in the same conversation as Miami. Now ask yourself, what do you get for $375,000 in Cape Coral that you can't get for $375,000 anywhere else in Florida? over 400 miles of canals. Pay a little bit more and you can get a direct access lot that puts you minutes from the Gulf by boat. A waterfront lifestyle that people in the rest of the country pay premium vacation prices just to experience for the week. The Redfin data from earlier this year tells us that Miami homebuyers search to move to Cape Coral more than any other metro in the country. I can tell you that that's true because of the amount of Miamians I've helped buy a home. So think about that. People already living in South Florida, already in the Sunshine State, already getting the tax benefits, they looked at their options and they said, Cape Coral looks good, because they can see what the price to lifestyle ratio actually is from the inside. And here's the other piece. That median price is down from its peak in 2022. The post-Ian correction, the elevated mortgage rates, the insurance environment, all of that has created a buyer's market here. 44% of listings saw price reductions last year. Months of supply is finally tightening, but it is still buyer favorable. So you have this market where price is corrected, inventory is available, buyers have negotiating leverage, and the underlying demand drivers, the structural reasons people move here, haven't changed. That combination is not going to last forever. It is a very small window. So the price story is compelling, but I want to show you something that the data alone can't fully capture, and that's what's being built here. Because infrastructure tells you where a city's going, not just where it's been. So if you really want to see where a city's headed, you don't look at current prices or current migration trends. You look at what governments are committed to building, because those decisions are made based on 20, 30-year population projections, not last quarter's sales data. So let me tell you what Lee County just committed to. The Cape Coral Bridge replacement is a project with a total estimated cost of over $500 million. And Lee County is currently pursuing a $250 million federal grant to help fund it. They're replacing both spans, the original westbound bridge from 1963, which is well past its prime, and the eastbound span from 1989. They're replacing it with two new 3-lane structures, so we'll have 6 lanes instead of 4. Now, the existing bridge already handles over 51,000 vehicles a day, but they're expecting to add 20,000 to that over the next couple decades. And construction is planned to begin in 2028. So here's what $500 million in bridge infrastructure tells you in plain English. Lee County is planning for a lot more people, a lot more commuters, a lot more daily trips over that Caloosahatchee. You don't make that investment if your population projections are flat. And the bridge isn't the only signal. The Burnt Store Road widening, the Del Prado and Pine Island commercial corridors that have seen substantial new development, Cape Coral's permit activity, all of this points in the same direction. A city preparing its physical infrastructure for the next wave of growth. If you look back, every major growth market in Florida built its infrastructure before the population fully caught up. They built the roads, the bridges, the commercial corridors, and then the people came. If you build it, they will come. Cape Coral is in that build-ahead window right now. When the infrastructure is finished and the rates eventually ease, the demand that was waiting on the sidelines is going to show up fast. So we've got the structural reasons to move to Florida, we've got the price advantage, and we've got the infrastructure signal. Now I want to show you the market conditions, because buyers right now have something that hasn't been available in this market in years. So let's talk about the current market conditions in Cape Coral, because I think that there's a narrative being told about this market that is simultaneously accurate, but also deeply misleading. Yes, prices are down from the 2022 peak significantly. We've corrected. Yes, days on market have extended. Yes, inventory is elevated relative to a couple years ago. And yes, technically, we're still in a buyer's market. All of that is true, but here is what else is true. By the end of last year, pending sales in Cape Coral were up 68% year over year. That is not a soft market. That is buyers coming back. Inventory has been tightening. In fact, Cape Coral had the tightest months of supply in all of Southwest Florida at 6.1 months, compared to Fort Myers, who was at 7.3, Bonita Springs at 7.5, and Naples at 7.8. And if you don't understand those numbers, that tells us what type of market we're in. Anything over 6 months is in a buyer's market. So we're slightly there, but not like some of the other cities. And homes are selling in a median of 60 days, the fastest pace in the entire region. So the correction cycle has done its work. The buyers who show up now, buyers who aren't caught up in a bidding frenzy, who have time to actually evaluate a property, who can negotiate 3 to 5% below list price in a market where sellers are motivated, those buyers are buying at a point in the cycle that 2021 buyers literally could not access. It didn't exist. That's called rate lock paralysis creating opportunity. That recycled inventory returning to the market at adjusted prices, that's a market that is fundamentally healthy. Yes, healthy. But it's been beaten up enough by negative headlines that it hasn't fully repriced back up yet. Are you sensing some opportunity here? So the demand floor here is structural. The buying window created by the current narrative is temporary. Those two things together are the equation. When rates ease up a bit, and the projections suggest 5 to 6% mortgages in the median term, the buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines are going to move fast. And the people who bought before that happened are going to look very smart in retrospect. All right, so I know we've covered a lot of ground, but I've saved the most important point for last because this is the one that I think changes how you see this entire market. So I want to paint a picture for you of the buyer that I see walking through Cape Coral properties right now. Not in 2021, not 2022, but right now, here in 2026. They've done their research. They've spent months, sometimes years, looking at their options. They know what Naples costs, they know what Sarasota's costs. They've probably looked at the Carolinas and Tennessee as well. And they've run the actual numbers on the tax savings, and they watched enough of our Florida real estate content to understand the difference between direct access, non-direct access, Gulf access. They're not here because they saw a TikTok about Florida's housing boom. That buyer already came and left in 2022. But the buyer that's here right now made a deliberate, calculated decision. And what they've decided is this. Cape Coral is one of the last places in Florida where you can get waterfront access, Southwest Florida's climate and lifestyle, and a price point that is still achievable without a luxury budget. Think about what I just said. Over 400 miles of navigatable canals, Gulf access by boat, Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Captiva, all just a short boat ride away, year-round outdoor living, the financial benefits of Florida residency, no income tax, no retirement income tax, and a median home price that is 11% below the national average. That combination, water access, lifestyle, price point, tax advantage, that's finite. It is running out in real time as this inventory of Gulf access and direct access waterfront lots decrease. And when those are gone, they're gone. Like they said, buy land, they're not making any more of it. The cities on the growth list, Ocala, Kissimmee, Claremont, they're going to be crowded, built out, and expensive in 10 years. Cape Coral will still have the Caloosahatchee, it'll still have the canals, it'll still have the Gulf. The people moving here right now are not late to the party. The hype buyers are gone, and honestly, good riddance because they inflated everything and made decisions based on a frenzy, not a plan. The buyers showing up now, they're the ones with the plan. They ran the numbers, they visited, they compared, and they chose Cape Coral. Not because it was trending, but because when you actually do the math, it really just makes sense. That is a more durable, more stable, and more committed buyer base than anything the pandemic migration wave could ever produce. And that is Cape Coral's quiet, unreported story right now. All right, let's bring this home. You came into this video because you've heard two different stories about Florida, the boom story and the slowdown story, and you wanted to know which one was true and what it actually meant for Cape Coral. So here's what we covered. 7 of the top 10 growth cities in America are here in Florida, but the rankings measure volume, not quality of buyer, not lifestyle fit, not long-term investment potential, just U-Haul moves. Now, migration slowed from the peak because the remote work cohort already moved. What replaced them is baby boomers with equity, a plan, and a very compelling reason to stop paying income tax. The structural reasons people move to Florida, the tax picture, the climate, the lifestyle, they're not trend, they're permanent. Plus, Cape Coral's median price sits below the national average, well below Naples and Sarasota, and 11% below the state median. And with over 400 miles of canals and Gulf access that those cheaper inland markets just simply can't offer. Plus, we have $500 million in bridge infrastructure. That doesn't happen in a city somebody is giving up on. The physical build out of Cape Coral is continuing. And the correction cycle, that's created a buyer's window. Pending sales up 68%, inventory tightening, homes selling fastest in Southwest Florida. That window right there, that has a shelf life. And these buyers that are in this market right now are the most deliberate, most researched, most financially committed buyer Cape Coral has seen in years. That is the buyer who builds a stable, long-term market. So Cape Coral isn't on the trending list, but that's okay. We don't need to be, because the people who find it, who actually dig in and look at what the numbers and the lifestyle and the location actually add up to, they don't need a list to tell them that it makes sense. They can see it themselves. So if you're thinking about relocating and you want a full picture of what Cape Coral actually looks like, the neighborhoods, the flood zones, the canal systems, we put together a free relocation guide that covers all of it. So make sure you grab that in the description below. And if you're already here, if you own in Cape Coral or you're thinking about making a move locally and you want to talk through what this market means for your specific situation, please reach out to us directly. Our contact info is in the description below, and we'd be happy to sit down and walk through it with you. Either way, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.